Okay, it's time to finish up our work on liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. We're going to be talking about the pancreas in today's lecture. Remember that it was a part of this whole outgrowth from the intestine wall. It starts as an outgrowth from here, both the dorsal and ventral pancreas, and as development proceeds, the ventral pancreas is moved around with its connection to the common bile duct to the back side. So there's a ventral pancreatic duct, and that bile duct right there were always together from the ventral side to the dorsal side. It was the main pancreatic duct here that used to be connected to the intestine a little bit higher up there. And if that remains in position, we call that the accessory pancreatic duct there. So the pancreas, when the ventral pancreas comes around, it fuses with the dorsal pancreas portion here to make a single pancreas with one lobe that extends out as a long portion and another lobe that is down here. This is often referred to as the head of the pancreas down in this region. This middle portion, the body, and this the tail. So we have the head, body, and tail. And that extension of the lower ventral pancreas right here is sometimes referred to as an uncinate process, or the uncinate region of the pancreas. And like I said, this is the whole area here of the head across here, the head of the pancreas. This would be the body through here, and this would be the tail then out here at the end. Head, body, and tail of the pancreas, with the uncinate process being an extension of that head from the old ventral pancreas component there. Remember, this is called the duodenal papilla. Where the ampulla of Vater makes its connection to the duodenum right there. So this right here, that connection. After the bile duct and the pancreatic ducts come together right here, that is the ampulla of Vater. Also called the hepatopancreatic ampulla. We mentioned the accessory duct here. The accessory pancreatic duct, I should say. Is that little dotted section I put in right here. This is the main pancreatic duct here. So that's the overall look at the anatomy of the pancreas. Now, it is situated in such a position over on this side where it is not as much out into the body cavity. It's not suspended by membranes from the dorsal body wall like many of the other loops of the intestine and the stomach are away from the body wall. So it's plastered against the back body wall. We use the term retroperitoneal. That just means it's behind the peritoneum. It's back behind the membranes. And so this surface, the front surface, would be covered by the parietal peritoneum membrane on this side. Part of the extension over there at the tail may also be pulled away from the wall a little bit more or back in the back. In our cat dissections, when we do cat dissections in lab, most of the pancreas is suspended within the membranes of the greater omentum below the stomach, not so much against the back wall. So here it is behind and below the stomach a little bit, out beyond that greater curvature of the stomach, and extending right up here to the duodenum over here on this side. Usually it has one opening from the ducts, right there, the duodenal, the major duodenal papilla, and there could be a second connection to the intestine there at the accessory pancreatic duct. This is sometimes called the lesser or minor duodenal papilla, if present there. Okay, in this image here, we see the pancreas again. This is the duodenum. There's our connection to the intestine right here. This would be where you see that major duodenal papilla there, where the connection to the pancreatic and bile secretions would be. Makes a little bolt-like thing on the inside of the intestine right here where it enters, that major duodenal papilla. So here's our main pancreatic duct here. Here's the duct from the ventral pancreas down below, and green is our common bile duct coming from above. The pancreas inside is divided into regions. We usually think of this as the dorsal lobe and ventral lobe, and within there we see it divided further into lobes and eventually into what we call lobules. Off of this main pancreatic duct are smaller ducts. We can draw a whole series of them in here. They come off at fairly regular intervals off along that main pancreatic duct. And then there are other ducts that drain into those ducts and so on, so that we have these smaller sections of pancreas that we call lobules. So there are many lobules within the pancreas, smaller sections of pancreas, and actually in its gross form, when you look at a pancreas, it kind of has a cottage cheese look to it, or like a bunch of chewed up bubble gum squished together or something in there, because it's made up of tiny lobules, tiny little sections in there. So we have small ducts that drain each of the lobules into the main pancreatic duct out here. So that's what gives the overall appearance to the pancreas. So also, well, first, these ducts conduct secretions from the pancreas. So the pancreatic secretions are intended to go into the intestine here, and they contain digestive enzymes, several digestive enzymes. There are proteolytic enzymes that break down proteins. There's different types of carbohydrate digesting enzymes in there, lipases, lipid digesting enzymes, and enzymes that break down both RNA and DNA molecules, ribonucleases and deoxyribonucleases. So anyway, a number of enzymes, they break down all of your basic organic molecule components. The carbohydrates, the proteins, the lipids, and nucleic acids, all of those kinds of molecules that are in your food, those organic molecules, are broken down by these enzymes, chemical digestion of the enzymes. So all these enzymes are vital to the digestive process in the intestine. They're secreted into the intestine and become active enzymes there to help break down your food. Another part of the exocrine pancreas, the secretions there, it would be the sodium bicarbonate. That sodium bicarbonate neutralizes stomach acids along with some other secretions that are in here. We neutralize the stomach acids so we have an environment in which those enzymes can work more appropriately. They won't work very well in the stomach acids that are coming out of the stomach. So we neutralize the stomach acids with that sodium bicarbonate secretion that comes out of there as well. The next thing we want to look at in here is the actual makeup of the secretory tissues of the pancreas. We're going to look at what it's made up of microscopically. We'll look at the histology of the exocrine pancreas. But in addition to the exocrine pancreas, there's also what we consider the endocrine pancreas. There are small clusters of cells scattered through the entire pancreas that have nothing to do with the secretion of enzymes for digestion, really. Not much, anyhow. These small clusters that are scattered in among all of the other tissues produce our hormones of insulin and glucagon. There are some other hormones produced by them as well, but we're primarily interested in those two. Those are primary hormones from the pancreas, insulin and glucagon. So anyway, we got these small clusters of cells. Those clusters of cells are sometimes referred to as pancreatic islets or islets of Langerhans. Islets of Langerhans. So, really two parts to our pancreas we need to worry about. One is the exocrine. That means it produces secretions that travel through ducts and are put into some destination out here. In this case, it's the duodenum that receives that. So that's exocrine secretion. And then there's endocrine secretion. Endocrine secretion is the release of chemicals into the bloodstream, hormones that will have their effect somewhere else in some other tissue. They're transported through the blood. So we have both an exocrine pancreas and an endocrine pancreas. They're both in the same place, but otherwise they're not that connected. All right, now we're going to look at the detail of part of the exocrine pancreas when you get down to the nitty-gritty inside of a lobule of the pancreas. This little illustration right here, this small illustration, shows several secretory units we call acini, or acini, I should say. A single one is called an acinus, A-C-I-N-U-S, an acinus. And that's what we're looking at here, a cluster of cells that secrete into these ducts. These tiny ducts right here are called intercalated ducts. And they all come together to make up larger ducts. In this case, this would be an intralobular duct. That would join with other intralobular ducts and eventually go outside of the lobule, beyond the lobule, and eventually into the main pancreatic duct. So that's the secretory portion that produces the digestive enzymes out here to go into these ducts and eventually into the intestine. A single acinus is shown here with the different cell types. This would be our intercalated duct leading out right here, and these are the main secretory cells of the acinus. This is simply referred to as a pancreatic acinar cell. Pancreatic acinar cell. These are the cells that make those digestive enzymes. Within that cell, you'll see lots of little enzyme-containing granules, and under the microscope, when they are stained, they typically show up as small, dark, bluish-purple granules throughout the cell. So they are very distinctive. In the exocrine portion of the pancreas, making up the pancreatic acini. Okay, we've put in all those secretory granules here. Go ahead and label those secretory granules. They secrete into this space in the middle here, so all of those secretions go into here. Within the center of a single pancreatic acinus, here we have a few enlarged cells, and these are simply referred to as centroacinar cells. They are somewhat enlarged forms of the duct cells that form the intercalated duct out beyond here. These cells, the centroacinar cells and the duct cells here in the upper portion of the intercalated duct, they secrete the sodium bicarbonate, that neutralizing chemical that neutralizes stomach acid, out in the intestine. So these components, the pancreatic acinar cells, centroacinar cells, and these upper duct cells here, all secrete useful materials that will aid in the digestive process in the intestine. That's your exocrine pancreas. Remember, these acini that are located here arrange into clumps and groups around larger and larger duct systems that form lobules. The lobules all gather together to form the major lobes of the pancreas. Now here we are with the islet of Langerhans, or our pancreatic islet cell group, a cluster of cells intermixed with all those exocrine pancreas cells. We find these endocrine pancreas cells. Within the cluster of the endocrine pancreas cells, within the islet of Langerhans, you'll find in there some capillaries. So here's a capillary here. There's another capillary here, another capillary drawn in right here. So there's a blood supply of capillaries to carry that hormone that's produced, the hormones that are produced, into the bloodstream to get to their destinations elsewhere. I've drawn two different colors of cells in here. The outer ones over here with the red margin and the purple nucleus that you see around the edge, these are what we refer to as alpha cells. Alpha cells produce glucagon, the hormone glucagon. The other cells in here that are in orange, these are beta cells. These produce the insulin. So those are the two primary hormones. There's another hormone, somatostatin, that's also produced by some other cells within the islet of Langerhans. And there are a few other hormones that are produced in the pancreas here in these islets that are not unique exactly to the pancreas, also produced by some of the intestinal cells and so forth and other locations. But anyway, these are the two primary hormones we're concerned about from the islet of Langerhans in the pancreas. The glucagon has its effect of freeing glucose to move into the bloodstream, primarily from the liver. So most of your blood sugars that are released in response to glucagon are coming from the liver. Some other tissues are involved as well, but we usually think of the liver when we think of glucagon action. So glucose is stored as glycogen, and it breaks down the glycogen and helps to free that sugar, those blood sugars, to move into the bloodstream there from that tissue. It also facilitates the metabolism of fats and proteins to make more glucose for your body. The insulin has kind of the opposite effect. It causes blood sugars to be stored in your tissues, your liver and your muscle and some other tissues there. So the insulin reduces your blood sugar. It increases the storage of sugars in your cells. Those blood sugars, mostly glucose again, is stored as glycogen in your tissues, in your liver and muscle and other tissues. So that's how those two work. So when you need more blood sugar, if you're running low on blood sugar, you might release more glucagon to free that from the liver and circulate it through the body. If you have had a good meal and your blood sugars are on the increase, you'll release more insulin, and that will cause your tissues to store the blood sugars.